So, welcome to BillMed Ultrasound Training Institute. We are now starting the question and answer session. So, this session is for those who are registered with us for different server-based courses. This is not a question, this is not a course right now what we are conducting, but this is a question and answer session for our registered candidates who are undergoing different server-based courses. So today we got many questions from our registered candidates, and we have a slide of all questions, and these are the questions posted for today's session. Like first question, these are the copy pasted questions. Copy pasted means that the language is original, whatever they posted, we just pasted it over here. So first question is from Dr. Sangeeta Jain. The first question from Dr. Sangeeta is that difficulty for taking the scar thickness and its measurement. So I told you that the language is even original. So the question states that she is having a difficulty in scar thickness, how to take the scar thickness. I am summing up the question. Now, second question is how to differentiate an RPOC and a polyp. So this is the second question from Dr. Sangeeta. Third is why we invert flow graph of ductus venosus. Can't we label it as a reversal diastolic flow? And the fourth question states in fetal biometry, you said it means that we said a gate is enough to take the umbilical artery and the umbilical flow in some scan. What it means. And the next question is what is A wave? Then the question is impact of acoustic impedance in day-to-day USG practice. So these are the list of questions. I just gave you the question from Dr. Sangeeta. Next is the Dr. Prana Bakshi, then Muhammad Rihan, then Dr. Niharika, then Dr. Amita Tiwari. Then we are having questions from Dr. Manisha, then Dr. Sanjay, Dr. Amita, and Dr. Tripti. Now I am having a printout of these questions over here. So this is the slide which I got printed over here so that I will not skip anybody's question. So let's start question. So first question from Dr. Sangeeta. So this is the printout of that slide. And this is the printout of next slide. So first question from Dr. Sangeeta is difficulty for taking scar thickness and its measurements. We have discussed how to take this scar thickness in detail in our one of the question and answer session, and it took me about half an hour over there. What I will do, I will not repeat it over here. I will send you the link of that class. That is not actually class, that was an interactive question and answer session. And plus to that, I will send you a Word file in which there is the matter also. You can go through the content also. So we'll not in detail take this answer because we have already taken in previous question and answer session some weeks before. So I will send you the link in your WhatsApp group of that detailed answer, which took me about half an hour, if not more. And I will send you a file also, which will give you more detail of this scar thickness. Second question is that how to differentiate an RPOC and a polyp. Now RPOC and a polyp, a retained product of conception. How to differentiate? I'm elaborating the question. How to differentiate an RPOC from a polyp? Dr. Sangeeta Jain's second question. In retained product of conception, point number one, UPT will be positive. Clinically, patient will tell you, yes, she was pregnant and now she is bleeding. Why in case of a polyp? patient will have a UPT positive. Maybe in some cases, even in a polyp, she may have UPT positive, but in most of cases, why? Only polyp, I'm using the word only polyp will have a UPT positive. So clinically, you have to also see where you are. Point number one. Point number second is that whenever you see an RPOC, usually RPOC will be having a heterogeneous ecotexture. Try to understand the word heterogeneous ecotexture. Whereas the polyps will not have, mostly the polyps will not have a heterogeneous but a homogeneous ecotexture. That is second point. Third point is that when you put a color onto a polyp, it can show you a feeding vessel, but not whole of the polyp will take color. Repeating, this is a very important point. In case of polyp, the whole of the polyp will not take color. There can be a feeding vessel which will show you color. But in case of an RPOC, what is RPOC? A retained product of conception. It means that the RPOC is having connection with the maternal vessels. It means that the RPOCs will show you color throughout. Whereas the polyp will show you only a feeding vessel. And why? You have to clinically also correlate. And why? Polyp will have bleeding PV. Very common things which I have to see. So very important here is the ecogenicity. Summing up, that is the heterogeneous in case of a RPOC and relatively homogeneous in case of a polyp, and the color feeding vessel only in case of polyp, and the whole of the RPOC can take color on color investigation. So this way you can differentiate whether you are dealing with an RPOC or a polyp. Third question from Dr. Sangeeta is that why we invert flow graph of ductus venosus? Can't we label it as a reversal of diastolic flow? Yes, we are not using a word invert. We are using a word reversal if there is a reversal. Try to understand. There are two different things which you have to see, you have to be very clear that whether I am dealing with an invert or a reversal flow. Reversal of flow means that the flow is crossing the baseline, whereas invert means that whole of the wave is inverted. There we are having a button, we are having a knob over there to invert the previous wave. So proper word, not proper word. The word has to be the reversal if it is crossing the baseline. So what I will do, I will draw this thing on the whiteboard so that this reversal and invert will be more clear. Anna, show me the board. Hurry up. In this spot. Then light. Fast. Now, I have in detail taken this in the course. Now, this is the baseline. This is the baseline over here. This is the baseline. Show properly. This is the baseline. If I am having a flow which is crossing the baseline, now see, this is the reversal. This is a reversal. This is reversal. So the reversal will be if it is crossing the baseline. Whereas, what is an invert wave? Invert means that if everything is, this is baseline, this is baseline over here, this is baseline, let me write it, baseline. If everything is coming on the other side of the baseline, so this is not a reversal, but this is invert. So this is invert where I am having whole of the wave on the other side of the baseline, and this is the reversal where the wave is crossing the baseline to the other side. So this is reversal, and this is the invert. So the word will be the reversal, but not a invert. In case of an abnormal ductus venosus. Okay. Now I have to spotlight this. So I can add also spotlight. Got it? So if I pin it, okay. Now one more question from Dr. Sangeeta is that what is an A wave? Now this is the question. What is an A wave? Now A wave, whenever, now see, try to understand, whenever atria are contracting, at some point of time, when atria are contracting, tricuspid valves are closed. The pressure will build up in the atria, and this pressure will be reflected in the venous system in the form of A wave. So A wave. So what is the A wave? A wave is the transmitted pressure due to the atrial contraction when tricuspid valves are closed. And this will be reflected, this pressure will be reflected in the venous system. So A wave is an expression of a normal atrial contraction when tricuspid valves are closed. So that is an A wave. Now, next question from same Dr. Sangeeta is impact of acoustic impedance in day-to-day USG practice. Now, see, you have to understand the concept of impedance, acoustic impedance. Impedance, now see, impedance is a stiffness. If I will be scanning a bone, it will not allow the beam to penetrate to other side. So I have to understand the impedance. There is no role in day-to-day practice, but I have to understand what the impedance actually is. So these were the set of questions from Dr. Sangeeta. Next is Dr. Pranab Bakshi. Dr. Pranab Bakshi is posting difference between a refraction and a reflection. So I'll see, reflection is simply bouncing back off the waves when it hits the medium. So the bouncing back of the waves is a reflection, whereas refraction can be defined as the process of the shift of the wave when it passes into the medium. So a reflection is a simple bouncing, whereas a refraction is when it deviates, when it shifts while it is penetrating into the medium or another medium. So next question from Dr. Bakshi, Dr. Pranab Bakshi, is that how to measure flow in umbilical cord. How to measure? Probably Dr. Pranab Bakshi has not completed the color Doppler, because this is the color Doppler's class. How to take? So there are practicals in your color Doppler. You please go to the class and complete the course. Then this question will not arise. How to? So if I have to sum up in some sentences the answer, you have to see for the free floating cord, and you have to measure, you have to take the Doppler at that level where it is free floating. I mean the free floating cord only. Now, at what gestational its abnormality signifies the. So the next part of the question from Dr. Pranab is that when I have to take the Doppler of the umbilical cord, I mean the umbilical artery and the umbilical veins. Now, I told you that in first trimester, there can be even absent diastolic flow. So in first trimester, I cannot state whether it is normal or abnormal, because in normal even there can be absent and diastolic flow. So it will be the second and the third trimester where I have to take the umbilical cord, I mean the Doppler of the uterine umbilical artery. Now, I again request whosoever is posting the question, at least you should have touched the topic or preferably completed the topic, because maybe this question, whatever is arising in your mind, is already taken in your course. So this is in detail in your color Doppler. Now, next question from Dr. Mohammad Rehan. Dr. Mohammad Rehan, sir, how to check endometrial scoring? Endometrial scoring is in detail in gynae ultrasound. And there we are having a detailed course, I mean the subtopic of how to, take the endometrial thickness, how to see for the scoring of the endometrial, that means the biophysical score of uterus. Yes, repeating, biophysical score of uterus, not the fetus, where we in detail are taking this score of the endometrial thickness. So please complete your course before putting any question. And then Dr. Mohammad Rehan is how to measure the hernia defect. So simple, you have to keep, he means that whenever there is a midline defect in case of any hernia, how to measure that? You have to keep your probe in a longitudinal section or transverse section. You think yourself, transverse or longitudinal. Of course, it will be the longitudinal, which will give you the full length. Then you have to measure the defect like anything. Now, next question from Dr. Niharika. After doing an OCR, how to check if there is any active bleeding, and when anywhere via ultrasound? Now see, this again is taken in the infertility ultrasound. How to check whether there is a receptivity or not? For that is the biophysical score of the uterus. Please complete your course before posting any question. Now, Dr. Amita, how to find inferior vena cava on color Doppler of the uterus? Inferior vena cava will be seen whenever. So the question is how to see for the inferior vena cava. Now the inferior vena cava can be seen if the fetus is in a sagittal section, a mid-sagittal section, not cutting the abdomen transversely. I have to see the sagittal in a sagittal section. So first and most important point is the section. If your section is mid-sagittal, then only you can see for the inferior vena cava as well as the aorta also. And aorta will be more pulsatile and inferior vena cava will be comparatively less pulsatile than an aorta. But the important point is the section. If your section is mid-sagittal, then only you can see for this aorta and the inferior vena cava. Otherwise, you will be searching for whole of your life. You will not get an inferior vena cava without having a proper section. Now, the next question from Dr. Manasha. Dr. Manisha is posting, sometimes we see a follicle-like follicle in a follicle in both views on TVS in a follicular scan. Which one to measure? Please throw some light. So this is the question. Now, it is not possible at all that the follicle will have follicle. It is not possible at all that there will be a follicle in a follicle. Now, what can be there? That there can be two very closely packed follicles, which looks like a follicle in a follicle. So first you have to clear the concept. There cannot be a follicle in a follicle. Why it looks like a follicle in a follicle? That maybe that there are closely packed follicles, and in some sections you may see that there is a follicle in a follicle. You have to take the dominant follicle. Your job is to take the dominant follicle. Your job is to see whether the dominant follicle is actually dominant or not. I am using the word actually because at some point of time the actual looking dominant follicle can get regressed and the pace can be taken by another follicle. This is a detailed course which is again in the infertility ultrasound. That is the folliculometry. there are 3 classes, if not 4 classes of folliculometry only. So there is nothing like follicle. In a follicle, maybe that these follicles are closely packed, and when you are throwing the beam, it is getting cutted and looking like the follicle in a follicle. So done with this question. Then Dr. Sanjay, how to identify the cord round neck? Cord round neck is a 40 minutes class. I'm having a detailed class on server, cord round neck. It is about a 40 minutes. It is probably in the color Doppler. Yes. So if you have not yet touched the color Doppler, whenever your color Doppler course will be activated, you will have a detail of this cord round neck. For now, I will give you some points. Never ever exclude or make a diagnosis in case of a transverse section, because if you are taking a transverse section, you may get cheated by a pseudo cord round neck. Did I said transverse? Sorry, longitudinal. You may get cheated if your section is longitudinal, because maybe that there is a cord which is next to neck. For example, over here, this type, let's assume that this is a cord over here. If the cord is over here and close to neck over here, if I take a longitudinal section, what I will see a loop over here on ultrasound. I will see one loop over here, and if there is another loop over here, so actually there are 2 loops over here which looks on a longitudinal section like a cord round neck. So that is what I told you. You may get cheated on longitudinal section. The appropriate section has to be a transverse section through the neck only, which will show you the actual cord around neck. Then another point is whether it is a tight cord or a loose cord. Please go to the class of the cord round neck itself. There is a class of cord round neck, which is about a 40-45 minutes in color Doppler. So the section is transverse, not the longitudinal section. So this page is done. Now, Dr. Amita. Dr. Amita is posting, what should be the significant difference between the CRL and NT in case of in twins to predict the TTS? Now, whenever you are dealing with a twin transfusion syndrome, there should be the discrepancy of more than 10%. Now the question here is, I gave you the first point, 10%. Remember this. Now, sometimes I can predict that this fetus can land in IUGR in first trimester, I mean. That is why this question arises. In first trimester, we can predict that this fetus can land in IUGR. So there are risks of IUGR in this fetus, in this twin, I mean. So in these twins, first, the discrepancies should be more than 10%. CRL, take CRL of A and CRL of B. See if the difference is more than 10%, then you can say that there are risks of TTS in this fetus. Second is that we have discussed this in early pregnancy, probably. Not in early pregnancy, multiple pregnancy. Multiple pregnancy is a huge course in itself, why we have discussed this. Second is the knuckle translucency. Again, there should be more than 10% discrepancy of the knuckle translucency. So I told you in start that the discrepancy should be more than 10%. Otherwise, it can be a constitutionally small fetus. But you cannot make a 100% diagnosis that this fetus can land 100% in second or third trimester in TTS. So you have to keep a watch on to that twin who is having a discrepancy, and a discrepancy of how much? A discrepancy of more than 10% only. Now, Dr. Amita's question, what is a cerebroplacental ratio? Cerebroplacental ratio, we take it in Doppler. Cerebroplacental ratio, try to understand in a simpler way. Whenever I take the middle cerebral artery PI, so whenever I take the PI of the middle cerebral artery and I am taking the PI of the umbilical artery as well. Now, there is a ratio which has to be maintained, and if that ratio, by ratio I mean the PI ratio of the middle cerebral artery versus the umbilical artery has to be maintained. If that will not, that will be disturbed, that we call the centralization of the flow, and that is actually the cerebroplacental ratio. So here the placenta means I am taking the flow, PI, flow of the umbilical artery, and cerebro means I am taking the flow of the middle cerebral artery. So it is the 0.55. So it is a bit complicated for beginners, but whosoever will do Doppler, they will be taking the cerebroplacental ratios also. So the cerebroplacental ratio in one line is the ratio of the pulsatile index of the middle cerebral artery and the umbilical artery PI. Now, the last question is from Dr. Tripti. Dr. Tripti is telling me ET measurement, the thickness of the endometrial keeps on changing while we are moving the probe, wire to freeze. So I'm summing up the question. Whenever I see endometrium, at some point of time, the endometrium at some point of maybe in fundal area, it can be 14, and lower down in body it can be 7. So the question is where to measure, at what point I have to measure the endometrial thickness. In one line, wherever it is, the thickest part, measure it there only. So these were the questions which were posted by some of our candidates. Now I will give 10 more minutes for this session. If anybody wants to pose directly any question to me right now, they have to raise the hand, not this physical hand, but the digital hand. What I mean by digital hand, there are 3 dots, the more option, and there is the raise hand option. Once you will raise the hand, not this physical hand, that digital hand. Once you will raise the hand, we will send you an unmute invitation. That means the pop-up will appear in your device, whatever you are using, to unmute your microphone. Please make a note. If you are having a background noise, then please don't raise your hand. Otherwise, the whole of the session will get disturbed by your background noise. So if you have any questions, you can raise the hand.
Sir, am I
please come? Yeah, please repeat your question. Yeah,
sir,
Dr. Amita.
Is there any specific place from where inferior vena cava has to be taken? Like in cases of aorta, we have to take the arc of the aorta.
Okay, got it. I will repeat your question, then you will tell me whether I have understood it in a way you want to say. Now, the question is that whenever we are taking the aorta, I am stressing on to take the at the level of the arch. Now the question is that where to take the flow from inferior vena cava. Is that your question, Dr. Amita?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now see, there is not a much of difference. Try to understand. There is not a much of difference, I mean, in flow wise. If you will be taking it somewhere high up, I mean in inferior vena cava, somewhere high up or somewhere lower down. But there will be a dramatical change if I take the aorta not from the arch, but from the lower down section. I mean, maybe in the abdominal area. Why? Because of the fetal circulation.
Yeah.
There is the ductus arteriosus, which is connecting. Recall the fetal circulation. There is the ductus arteriosus, which is connecting, and that is not connecting onto the arch. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, sir. It is connecting.
That is why. That is why I am stressing not to take the flow in the aorta from the descending part, at least not from the descending part, but from the arch. Is there any connection? I mean, any connection between fetal circulation with the inferior vena cava? Yes or no?
No, sir.
No. So there will be no difference whether you will be taking it high up or lower down when I say inferior vena cava. Anything else? Okay. Now, Dr. Smita, I am sending you an invitation. Dr. Smita.
Yeah. Sir, how to measure amniotic fluid index in obstetric cases?
Have you completed your fetal ultrasound, Dr. Amita? Tell me, Smita, sorry.
No. No, sir. No, sir. Okay.
It is already there in fetal ultrasound.
Okay, okay.
That is why, now see, this is the proof in itself. If you complete the course, then your answer is already there. If I will be summing up your answer, your questions answer over here, I will not do justice. Why? Because here I am taking the question and answer session. There it is about 1 hour plus. And even if after that you will not understand, for that I am here. Post me the questions. You got it?
Yes.
Next, Dr. Tripti. Dr. Tripti ka ho gaya? Na? Ho gaya na? So now, Dr. Dr. Tripti, you there? Done with Dr. Tripti. Dr. Abhinash. So this will be the last one. Dr. Abhinash, sending you an invitation. Dr. Abhinash, please hurry up.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, how to grade mild, moderate, and severe ascites on ultrasound, sir? Sir, I have completed ultrasound course.
Got it. Now see, the question is how I can measure before labeling whether it is mild, moderate, or severe ascites, because I am very clear. Try to understand. I am very clear how to make a diagnosis of a mild, moderate, and severe POD, pouch of Douglas fluid.
Sir,
I am comparing it with the posterior wall, then I am having some ratios. I will not take it over here. So the point here is that I am very clear. I am having guidelines. You have to measure, you have to compare it with this so that to label whether I am dealing with a mild, moderate, and severe POD fluid. But the question is, what about the ascites? The ascites, I cannot measure whole of the ascitic fluid. Try to understand this thing. I cannot measure whole of the ascitic fluid. When I measure the amniotic fluid, I am not 100% sure, because maybe that there will be some fetal parts also. But in case of ascites, there will be a lot of gut loops. How I can measure it? So I cannot measure, and if I cannot measure, I cannot make 100% diagnosis, not even a 90% diagnosis that this is mild and this is the cut, where if it will cross, it will be labeled as moderate, and if cross, it will be labeled as the severe. Now, this is completely there are many things which you have to, which the books and this Mr. Google will tell you, you have to see this, you have to see, but at the end of the day, you cannot do justice if you stick to these rules. So this is only and only a visual impression. If you see less of the free floating bowel loops over there, if you see that bowel loops are not even floating over there, there is a mild fluid in between some loops over there, that will be mild. But if the bowel loop starts having a free movement over there, starting free movement over there, that can be moderate. And if you see more of these bowel loops which are floating, that will be a severe one. But the point is, I cannot measure the ascitic fluid. Dr. Tripti, this will be the last one. Dr. Tripti, I'm sending you an invitation.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Tripti.
Yes, sir. Sir, I
Mhm.
want to know that many times while doing follicular monitoring, we find one of the ovaries, but another ovary is like we are not able to find it. Lovely. We have tried hard, but we have not found it. So how we have to do our further monitoring? How suppose I'm not seeing it, but it is there. So how to proceed further, sir?
So I am not getting your question. I'm not understanding it rather, that you are having follicles in one ovary and another no follicles in other ovary. What
No,
next?
sir. No, sir. The ovary, I'm not able to find the ovary in TVS. Another ovary is I'm not able to find it.
Okay,
so
got
what
it.
to do?
So the question is that, okay. So the question is that you have got one ovary and there are some follicles or multiple follicles over there, but you are not able to find another ovary. What to do?
Yes, sir.
That is your question, huh?
Yes, sir.
Now, how can I say without seeing a ovary that there is follicle or there are no follicles?
So what
So
I
you have to
have
first
to
of
do?
all make each and every attempt to see that, to get that ovary. The point here is that you are expecting, if you got one ovary over here, now try to understand, if you got one ovary over here at this angle, when
Yes,
you are
sir.
inserting the probe or you are putting a probe over here, you are getting ovary over here, the right one. You are
Right.
expecting, your brain is expecting to have the next ovary, I mean the other side is ovary, on the same side. This is the trap.
So
If
what are the
you
tips,
expect
sir?
this is the trap itself. The ovary, the right-sided ovary can be here. Don't expect the left-sided ovary on the same location. You have to fight for the ovary. Then only you can say that whether this ovary is having a dominant follicle or that ovary. How can we comment on that ovary which we have not seen? So the basic, if you are taking, are you taking more of TVSs or TSs?
The TVS, sir.
TVSs.
Yes.
Before TVS, this is the problem. Before TVS, have a look on a TAS.
Okay, sir.
Because sometimes it is easy on TAS to get
Yes, sir.
the ovary, not
Yes, sir.
clarity wise, but location wise.
Yes.
Why? Why? Because TAS is having a broader field, whereas TAS is having a narrow field. Are you understanding this?
Right, sir.
Now, whenever you insert the probe, you are having a clarity, but at an expense of field.
Yes, sir.
You getting the point now? Now,
Yes, sir.
first, have a look on TAS. Because in TAS, you can see this area. Now try to understand this area as well as this area, as well as this area, as well as that area. Because on TS, I am having a broader field. But when you are starting with TVS, you are having a narrow field. So first, have a look on a TAS, and then if you know on TS that the exact location of the ovary of this ovary is somewhere here where I'm expecting, and the next ovary is towards the cul-de-sac, then you will move your probe on during when you are doing the TVS towards that area. So the basic important point is that if you are a fresher, take a look on a TAS and then switch to the TVS, and most of times it will be like a guide for you that the ovary is not here but there. Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome. So this was all about today's session. I hope that you have got answers to your questions, whatever posted today. See you next time very soon. You will get a notification in your WhatsApp groups regarding our next interactive question and answer session. God bless all of you. Thank you very much.